Make sense? Let's get into it. The recent situation in Canada has received international attention across the internet. People are wondering how a liberal, democratic country like ours could ever resort to authoritarian approach so quickly. Disagreeing with the freedom convoy or opposition sides of the political debate is a common component of a democratic society, so it was surprising to see how the Canadian government chose to enforce a never-before-used federal legislation, the Emergencies Act, an extension of an anti-money laundering rules designed to introduce temporary measures to deal with what it deems to be a public emergency. Could the latest financial censorship actions be a positive for cryptocurrency? Or is Canada's decision to expand the anti-money laundering laws to capture crowdfunding platforms, including crypto transactions, a setback for digital currencies? Allegedly organized by far-right activists, conspiracy theorists, and other political views, the so-called Freedom Convoy has dominated international headlines as participants called for an end to all coronavirus restrictions, and for Prime Minister Justin Trudeau to be removed from office. It's no surprise that social movements, including the Freedom Convoy, can act as a common language that could really motivate people. Freedom is something that people hold dear, and it could be something that anyone would want to fight for. That's why we also witnessed groups of people who made it to Ottawa to protest peacefully. They clearly wanted to share their concerns about mandates and how it affects their families, their finances, and their way of life. Speaking of finances, many businesses affected by the protests, mostly small businesses, were once again facing financial hardship, as if the pandemic wasn't already difficult to handle. Even Canadian citizens who didn't follow any news coverage on the Freedom Convoy felt the impact through supply chain disruptions. Whether you agree or disagree with the Freedom Convoy or the way the federal government handled the situation, it seems cryptocurrency is also receiving a fair share of the media spotlight. So why exactly did cryptocurrency get pulled into the political mix? Could Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies be viewed as a freedom technology? Or is the latest situation a negative backdrop for many protocols already operating on the blockchain? To be crystal clear, if any protesters committed a crime, I believe they should be held accountable. Cryptocurrency does not change that. If you're thinking define a crime, well, let me be even more crystal clear. If you steal, use violence, or intimidate others, or commit other extreme acts of violence, you're not part of this conversation we're having today. Okay, so let's move on. It's not difficult to find opinions that completely oppose the decision regarding the Emergencies Act. Rather than meet with protesters to hear their complaints or encourage their protesting within a designated area of the city, the Canadian government has responded with one-and-done approach that is typically seen with dictatorship. If you think about it, there are individuals who could be financially sanctioned in a way that was previously reserved for enemies of war. Take, for example, the Russia-Ukraine situation. The United States is threatening financial sanctions, including potential removal from the SWIFT system, if Russia chooses to invade Ukraine. One could argue there are similarities between the threat of sanction to Russia and the current financial sanctions that are being introduced against Canadian citizens. Look, I know this might sound extreme, but hear me out. I'm simply drawing attention to financial censorship. If there is one positive outcome of this situation, it is that millions of people in the Western world are now being made aware of financial censorship. You've already heard me speak about internet censorship on this channel, so now we're going to be talking about financial censorship. The idea of financial censorship is growing more than we think. Today we have the US confiscating Afghan central bank assets. We have the US threatening Russia with the removal from the SWIFT payment system, depending on what actions Russia pursues in Ukraine. We have the Canadian government pressuring financial institutions to confiscate any funds that are being sent to the truckers' Freedom Convoy protest. Each of these situations is different and, yes, very complex, but they are all a form of financial censorship. The more aggressive the government becomes with financial censorship, whether towards each other or towards their own citizens, the more popular that Bitcoin becomes in the eyes of those on the internet. Every attempt at financial censorship is a marketing campaign for Bitcoin, according to Anthony Popoliano. Anthony understands disruptive technology very well and ran a product and growth teams at Facebook and Snapchat and invested over $100 million in early-stage technology companies. So how does Bitcoin become more relevant? Bitcoin is a censorship-resistant currency. No one can prevent you from sending it, from receiving it, or keeping it. No one can debase the currency. It's completely decentralized. So when the public views Bitcoin as a freedom technology, what they are saying is that the individuals, to the organizations, to the nation states, should have the freedom to choose how to use the digital currency. No government, no company, or individual can impose their views or desires on you. Now, going back to the Freedom Convoy, if they raised money through a censorship-resistant currency, no one could have taken those funds from them. A peaceful protest and standing up for your rights would not change that. However, acts of crime and violence would. This is where Bitcoin could become a more realistic concept for the non-believers. This singular monetary network can return the world back to sound money and to individual sovereignty. Those may seem like crazy ideas on the surface, but we are watching multiple examples play out in front of us that's proving to be why it's so important. Rather than viewing Bitcoin as a volatile asset with no use cases, consider this. My assumption is that most people probably thought these authoritarian measures would never happen in their own countries. Canada, known by the world as a democratic country, has caught many people off guard with this Emergencies Act. Financial censorship has become real for some Canadians, and I believe this is where the world is heading. Censorship, resistant, decentralized individual rights for only law-abiding citizens of our societies. My name is Michael Zagari, and if you've enjoyed this video, please subscribe to the channel. I'm extremely passionate about what the future holds of our digital economy, and I've got more videos lined up. I'll see you in the next one.